Hi, I'm Lauren. Thanks for joining me in my craft room today. I am back with another video with my version of Sheetload of Cards from Call Me Crafty Al for January. As always, I will have a link down to her video where you can learn about Show Us Your Sheet Load and how to get a copy of the instructions yourself. I also tend to use old paper that I found in my stash. These are from Amy Tangerine, American Crafts, the Yes Please collection, and I'm using this red and blue paper for my cards. I did find an old 6x6 pad that I will link down below, but it is retired, so use what you have in your stash. I absolutely love these corgis from Artful Angel, and I'm going to be using that corgi with the little balloon and flower in his mouth for my cards. So I went ahead and prepped everything. I have everything cut down to what I need, and I'm going to make one of these cards on camera. I already made a sample card and kind of learned how I wanted to adjust my take on the sketch, so let's make this card together. I also die cut some hearts using my nested heart dies from scrapbook.com, and I went ahead and stamped and used my scan and cut to cut out my corgis. So let's get going. I have my little strip here from the sketch, and I decided to use that for my sentiment. And so I have it all lined up in my Misty, and I'm using some VersaFine and Onyx black ink. And I have the sentiment, Will You Be My Valentine? This is from the Big Love stamp set from Artful Angel that was gifted to me, so I could create some fun cards. I did make a card already for Craft Roulette last month using these sets, but I wanted to also make more Valentine's Day cards because these corgis are just too cute. So I have my sentiment ready to go. I decided to move on to coloring, so let me get zoomed in here. And I'm using my Ohuhu markers, and I have the caps on screen. Now sometimes the numbers are a little small, so I'll do my best to read them out loud here. So I'm starting with the darkest parts of my corgi, and I'm using BR2 to be my darkest shade for the kind of orangey fur of a corgi. My midtone is going to be YR107, so I'm just dragging out some of that darker color and then adding more to create kind of a midtone, like I'm coming out from the shadowy parts of this sitting corgi. And then the last color for the orangiest parts of the corgi is YR4. So just completely coloring in all of the area, blending that dark and mid-tone out. And I just really like this color combo for the corgi. I think it's a little dark, but it's a great contrast to the white that I'm going to create on the rest of the fur. So now I'm using YR4 as my darkest shade for the white parts of my corgi's fur. Next, I brought in E090, and this is my midtone. So again, just like I did with the dark parts of the corgi, coloring over the darkest and dragging out that color with my midtone. And then my lightest is actually going to be just the colorless blender, and I'm just kind of trying to mute out that color because it is white fur, but I wanted it to have a warmer kind of edge to it since the corgi does have orangier fur. This is R110, and I'm coloring that in his little ears and his cheeks. And then I'm also bringing in R080 to be the second color in the ears, and YR95 for the nose. For the rose, I'm using R6 and R200. I did my best to color match the red of my paper, and the green stem is G1. It's very tiny, so just going in there very gently to add in the green. For my balloon, I wanted to tie in with that tealish blue, so I'm going to be using two colors. I'm using BG4. I'm starting out with my lightest color just to get some ink into the heart, and then BG68 is the darker color, and I'm kind of going over that again, and that way it has a little more inky paper to blend into, and then that BG4 again to blend it out. I wanted it to look like it was, rounded and kind of see-through, so I did my best to not overly color the balloon. Now I have my white gel pen, and I'm just going to add some little highlights here and there, and of course can't forget the little cheeks. I just love adding little white dots to my animals and critters' cheeks. So now that all of the hard stuff's done, let's start gluing everything together. I decided for my cardstock I wanted to bring in white and craft, so I'm going to be layering the craft onto my pattern paper following the Show Us Your Sheet Load sketch from Call Me Crafty Al. Now, I didn't do the best job at centering this craft cardstock. I tried to take it apart, but I'm using my Scotch ATG and that stuff does not budge. So it's a little off center, but that's okay. It's a handmade card. I'll gift it to someone who won't notice. And then I'm going to layer on my red cardstock. And then I will layer my sentiment onto that second piece of craft cardstock. So I'm tying in craft here for layering. This is just a cheap brand from, I believe it's from Michael's. I think I linked down something similar that most people will have in their stash, but I'm pretty sure this is just Recollections craft cardstock that I've had forever. And then I'm bringing in white cardstock by adding in that white heart, and then I'm going to put this onto a white card base, which is my favorite if you've been here long. I'm adding in some foam adhesive. So I'm using two types here because there is some paper in the middle and I want my sentiment to be as flush as possible. So I have my thin foam squares where it will overlap the most paper, which is in the red in the middle. And then I'm using my ThermoWeb foam. It's thin but slightly thicker, and I use those just on the edge where it would overlap on the blue background of the pattern paper. Now I added my heart. I went at kind of an angle in my sample. I put it just kind of straight forward, but I felt like you couldn't see much of the heart. So I lifted it up a little bit and tilted it so that way when I layer on my corgi, you could still see a lot of that heart shape. I'm using ThermoWeb adhesive again to put some adhesive behind my corgi image, and then I'm going to glue the corgi. It looks a little off-centered because I wanted to follow the sketch, but with the balloon, it actually is centered to the card. Now I have my white card base. This is 3¼ by 6¼ when scored and folded, and then adding my background now to my card base. Again, I followed the directions when it comes to dimensions from Crafty Owl, so use that link down below in my description if you want to learn more about how you can make this card yourself. Of course, we have to add a little bit of touches, so I'm grabbing my pops of color. This is in, I believe, Dusty Rose. Yes, Dusty Rose. It's a gloss pops of color, and just adding 5 around the card. It's always the hardest part for me figuring out where to add pops of color, but I like how I laid them out. I open the card and just tap the inside so I can dome out those pops instead of them looking like little Hershey Kisses. And here is a final look at this cute little Valentine. I absolutely love this mini slimline size, and that corgi is just too cute. Here is my card sample and the one I made on screen today. I hope you enjoy my take on the Show Us Your Sheet Load sketch. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!